Welcome to Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you are looking for an interesting commercial, marketing, and sales podcast that is bold, unfiltered, unconventional, and authentic, you are at the right place. Curious how to play the game better and smarter? We will share how we crack the code to hyper growth for our customers. We will invite amazing people. We will share our experience, the first attempts in learning, cracking the code, and finally the results. And last but not least, we will give you food for thought. Now, let's get started.
Hello everybody and welcome to the podcast of Serving Your Market like a King or Queen. And today we have a special guest. We welcome Dana Shiragwandi. Dana, welcome, man.
Thank you so much. I was really looking forward to be a part of this podcast. So let's get started.
Cool, man. Great to have you in. And let's first kick it off with a little bit of an introduction about Dana. So private related, he's an average chess player and a cinematic lover. And work related, he's a young sales leader, the head of BizDev, and he's focused on everything related to tribal knowledge. We know Dana from the community where we are all part of, Pavilion, and look forward to a interesting dialogue today, and the topic will definitely be of interest. So what will be the promise of today's podcast, right? Told a little bit about Dana's business-related knowledge and background. That's focused and centered around tribal knowledge. So the promise of today's podcast will be serving your market by growth through togetherness like tribes do.
Exciting.
Cool. All right. But before we start, we have our tradition. And every episode we have a drink with our guest. And Dana, what are you having, man?
Well, you told me about all the specialty beers you usually drink during these podcasts. So I'm not much of a beer drinker. So I did want to try and honor the tradition. So I bought 3 types of beers. Local beers. This one is called Biri. This one is called Eiwit, protein. And this one is called Pois Tropical. I won't be drinking them, won't be drinking all of them, but I'll take some sips and make sure that I'm still sober at the end of this podcast.
Cool, man.
Cheers, nice.
Thank you.
How about you, Lisbeth?
This time for me a glass of rosé. So cheers to you guys. And you, Jeroen?
Yeah, I have a specialty beer. So I thought for this conversation, it's I have a Sombrero BA. It's a triple aged on tequila barrels with mint and lime zest, and it says beer for thought. So yeah.
Wow.
I thought that was probably related to this dialogue, and maybe also some action, obviously following it. But let's have a beer for thought first. So cheers, guys, and
cheers.
Looking forward to a good conversation.
Good. So Dana, the honor is mine to ask you the first question. So what we always like to know from our guests is how did you get where you are today in terms of your milestones, your own journey?
Yeah, I think I've been doing sales all my life, actually. I mean, I was born and raised in a small village in the Netherlands, Winterswijk, where I was actually forced by my parents to do all kinds of chores for neighbors to make a little bit of extra money, basically pocket money. So I would go door to door and ask, hey, can I mow your lawn or clean your car? And I started off with that. Then I moved on to telemarketing, and that's where it actually really started, and the love for sales actually started. Just calling people, having fun in an office, and helping them with things I didn't actually understand very well. It was mostly focused on mortgages, and I was probably 14, 15 years old with very little knowledge of that. So that's how most of my love for sales actually started, and it moved on. I was always focused on learning a lot more about politics, so I worked in political lobby, which is also a form of sales where you have certain concepts that you discuss and you try to convince people to change their policies. I think that would be a good description of how I've become a business development manager.
Thank you.
Right. Let's move a little bit further then into the growth fundamentals piece, right? So I think we see some things happening in the world, right? I think over the last 18, 19, 20 months, and then we can't neglect what has happened in the world. But if we look actually closer into specifically in the business world, we see more and more people having a mindset and companies adopting a mindset of we just want to say goodbye to businesses that are solely driven by financial growth, where the customer always comes first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then second, in this case, then always the internal teams, right? And it's at the end of the quarter, who is successful? The company.
Yeah.
Embracing and adopting different mindsets where business driven or driven by growth and happiness. It's actually the offering they deliver is intertwined with the needs of the society, where internal teams come first, and the success will be unlocked of the talent, right? Of investors, of customers, mm-hmm. of shareholders. Ultimately seen that also benefits obviously the company, right? So, and there's a lot at stake for companies, because what we see happening, right? It's the great resignation, the war for talent, companies that are making different decisions on how and why to buy something. That's not solely just related because something is cheaper or the product is good, right? They want to buy from companies that take good care of their people, that are connected to a social cause. So not adopting that new mindset, right? Or not playing that new game is they could ultimately lose their commercial talent, for example, their customers, their relevancy, and would disappear. And that's a big thing which is happening, right? So you as a business development leader, how does this influence the development of your own leadership skills currently when you see everything around you and happening, and how has this changed also the contribution you're delivering across your internal team?
I think these are good questions. I mean, first of all, these blockbuster titles of the war on talent and the Great Resignation, they're very, very real. Also in Europe, it's the Great Resignation is really coming up. I think when you look at people-centric management, you really have to focus on really discovering talent. Even if you have them in-house already, you want to focus on the skill sets. So as a business leader, I would say it's really important to understand which skills are necessary for which type of role. And as a company, you have a responsibility in teaching people that. Now, what I've experienced, in the description, when you introduced me, you said a young sales leader, and that's what I am. So I have a lot of experience as being, a sales development representative, as an account executive. So I know what management feels like and how they actually handle and offer opportunities to people in those roles. And it's never focused on the skill set. It's usually focused on the metrics. How are you contributing to the company? What are your numbers? How productive has that person been? How much shine did they basically claim in that company? Now, as someone with a growth mindset, and I believe you are one of those people as well, it's very important to really understand the different types of skills you need to understand and hone before you can master a certain role. So as a company, focus on that, map it, discuss it with your employees, and ensure that they have something to work toward. And that is not always a promotion necessarily. It's an improvement of their skill set. So that's a sub goal, which will create a lot of fulfillment. And I think that's something we have to focus on. And also it's good for PR, ultimately. I mean, if you just look at Glassdoor and all the reviews about companies, it's something we have to focus on as a business. Will that employee that just started be a lot better at what they're doing 2 years from now? Not just because they've been practicing that same job for 2 years, but because they have a better understanding of what is needed to perform well. So yeah, that has influenced me in great ways.
Yeah, and I like that example, right, Liz? But I think also something that is recognizable, right, for us. I think I showed that you earlier as well, Dana, right? The growth development template, right, which shows actually based on a certain competence or skill, how can you improve that from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. Right, and then it's not solely only let's say typical SDR, right? If the SDR at the end will only be evaluated if that person did 20 appointments or 30 or whatever, right? And it's not being steered and invested in also on developing the competence and skills. Yeah, that's
it's missed opportunity.
It's a missed opportunity indeed.
No. It's a missed opportunity.
Absolutely, because I think what a lot of companies do, specifically the older ones in the market, they say, "Hey, we have a very flat organization, so there are no opportunities for growth." But that's so wrong to say, because exactly what you're saying, and where we believe in that, if you have the chance to develop yourself and to become better, it will positively influence the company. What you're saying, it's good for your brand. It's becoming more and more transparent if you're a good employer or not.
Yes.
So there's only a win if you change that mindset and think about it in that way, and that you also connect the salaries to it. In the old way, just the skills. So 5 years, and then okay, this year was positive. Okay, you get 1 extra step, and that was it. But why? If you're contributing to a whole, then it should be worth. Then the value is different as well. So that's also a very interesting inflection point here, maybe. At least to consider for CEOs in their human strategy.
I totally agree. I mean, we talk about ownership all the time, being very assertive, act like the business is yours, but we don't teach the people what it means to have a business. So it's quite simple. You have a let's say a new marketeer or a new sales development representative, and all they're told is you need to book 10 meetings. That's what you need to do. And sometimes they share, okay, you need to have at least 8 touch points before you get a meeting in. But why are we not explaining why we need those 10 meetings? Why are we not explaining how to get those 10 meetings? Exactly. Not just by stating, okay, this is the amount of effort you have to put in. No, let's focus on those skills. You need to be able to listen to people, to repeat and give summaries to people, to understand their pain points, to really do at least adequate discovery calls in order to grow as a salesperson, and maybe even grow to a sales executive or a sales leader in that form.
Yeah, I like those examples, right? And I think it's obviously also related to the topic, right? As a tribe, right? Each role in itself has obviously also needed a different skill set, right? But I think when you formalize a set of shared competences, right? That the whole tribe, or in this case, the one commercial team, should have in place. And obviously, when you are a VP of sales, you should have a different level of understanding and capability than on, for example, the portfolio than a graphical designer. Let's set 2 extremes, but they all need to have a certain understanding on, for example, portfolio knowledge, right? And but they all understand also that this is the role they are playing, and this is what we can expect from each other, right? And I think that's so relevant in a tribe, right? That you all understand and respect each other, and that you know what role you are playing in the bigger piece. So I love that example, Dana. So cool. So let's Yeah, I wanted to have your thought also on another topic. It's something that we've brought up now a couple of times in earlier of our podcasts as well. But it's a thesis, and I think it's interesting to get your viewpoint on it, especially in a SaaS market, which is talking a lot about product-led growth. Let's keep it like that. So let's bring this thesis to the forefront, right? So start with claiming a purpose-driven topic in a market, not with going to market with your product.
Yes, of course. I mean, you have to focus on the purpose. It's a big part of the marketing behind it as well. I mean, if you just focus on the product, people will focus on the features. If they focus on the features, they lose the big picture. They start looking at things they might want to improve. I mean, buyers nowadays, they use all kinds of tools. I mean, the amount of lead gen tools we can use is just, it's mind-boggling to have a look at that landscape. I mean, you don't even know where to start anymore. And you'll see one feature in one tool, and you'll see another feature in another tool, and you'll think, okay, these two are great features. Yeah. So my choice is now that I'll go for this company. And then I'm looking at that software fully product focused, and I'll think, well, you guys are missing this feature. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I want to pay what you're asking me to pay. I think we should negotiate about this pricing, because they've lost the bigger picture. You're not focusing on the narrative. You're focusing only on the features. You're not listening to what the client is looking for, where they get some sense of fulfillment in using a certain tool and promoting it within the company, and being secure and confident that people will appreciate this type of tool. You're solely focusing on the product. I think that's a big mistake. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
No, definitely, man. It's obviously a thesis, so it's up to you to give an answer that you feel and believe in. But it is typical, and I think it's the chain that you explain, right? That you will easily get drowned into a swamp of dialogues around the features is, I can only say, recognizable. And but it's interesting to talk more on this probably later on in the dialogue, right? Because I think a couple of days ago or so, I had a chat as well with someone in the network, and they were building a great narrative, right? But they have not involved the sales team in actually creating that. And I can imagine that, then all of a sudden that narrative is given to the sales team, and here you go now, and here's your target and the narrative. Here, sell our narrative. Yeah, that's not the way it works, right? It's also the internally getting the teams in it and involved in it, and part of it is just as relevant as the external side of things. But it's super interesting to talk more on that later. But it's I fully agree with your viewpoints on this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we just look at the car industry, automotive industry, and we look at electrical cars, I mean, it makes a big difference for the climate, right? It has a big impact on the climate. They're a lot more expensive than cars that run on gas. So it's the narrative they're selling, but every person within that company needs to believe that narrative as well, to actually speak
exactly
highly of that solution, not simply saying, okay, hey, we're promoting climate change, or this car will enable you to do this and that. No, focus on the passion for working for that company and the why of that company, and that's how you basically inspire people to work with you or to buy your solution.
And I also think how you build relationships, because you share that belief or you share values.
I think so, yeah. Internally, I mean, if you're working toward a goal, a higher purpose for a company, then internally, you know what you're doing. You, as a salesperson, you want to drive sales. Usually, you just want to get more revenue in. So you might want to, some salespeople focus on the wrong type of client, right? But if you have a good understanding of the purpose internally, you'll be able to manage that process more efficiently, discuss it more efficiently, work with marketing, work with customer success in order to have, your eye on the ball, if you will.
Yeah.
And make sure that I'm not sure if that was a translation of Dutch to English, just to ensure that you're all on the same frequency.
Yeah, I agree. So we touched a little bit already on the old game, new game. Because we talked a little bit about the companies that are mainly focused on the financial growth, but the ones who really want to have that competitive edge are looking broader than that. They look at their people and happiness. You said people not limited to employees, but also their customers, other stakeholders like investors, etc. And also the transformation part, because nothing will change if everything stays the same. So you need to have that kind of transformation mindset as well to stay relevant and to play that game, because the market is changing constantly. You have to keep up with it. You have to stay relevant. So if you look at the topic of this podcast, and we are saying we say goodbye to revenue through separate entities and hello to growth by togetherness, because we truly believe that that changes the game for everyone. And as you said, from a kind of tribe perspective, it's the same idea, of course, that everyone plays its role and you're in it together. You win, you lose, you laugh, you cry, you're in it there. So my question to you is, why do you believe that serving your market by growth through togetherness will give you a competitive edge?
Yeah, good question. I think if you focus on the tribal knowledge within a company and the tribal culture and that togetherness, you have a much better understanding of the market. You have a much better understanding of the product and of all the processes within the company. So once you get a better understanding of the whole picture, the bigger picture, if you will, you'll be able to serve that customer a lot better. You'll be able to serve those investors a lot better, because you'll have a purpose and you'll have a much more developed product and a much more developed team. Now, internally, it means, for instance, when something starts with sales, okay, you'll have a product and then you move on to sales, people will start selling it. They'll have a tough time selling it if there is absolutely no marketing. It requires only grit and a lot of hard work and volume, right? So sales and marketing need to work together, and they need to understand what it is, what the other part of their other member of their tribe needs. So what I see nowadays, there's a quite a large gap between marketing and sales. But even in sales, there's a large gap between new business and customer success. And just by sharing those experiences, sharing the pain points, sharing the actual reason why that company signed up, sharing the whole process of signing them up, how many key moments were there, how many touch points, and from a customer success experience, why did they renew, how much time did it take, what stakeholders did you need, what pain points did they have, what feedback did they have on the product, which is also very important for marketing, but also important for product. Now, this ultimately allows you to build a much better product. And I do believe that product is essential. Now, in the beginning, I said something, you don't sell the product necessarily, you sell the solution, which is part of the product, but it's mostly focused on all the needs a company has. But by building that product based on all the needs that company has and further developing it, that's how you achieve I would say total dominance. That's what we're all hoping for.
Serving. You prefer
Hey.
serving.
But we could say serving the market.
Exactly. Don't dominate too hard, Dana. Otherwise, you get the Intel moment.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, most founders and salespeople, they want to move toward a total dominance of the market. But I mean, we can only do that if we're actually serving these customers and we retain these customers. And there are ambassadors eventually. That's what we have to look for. Our clients should become our ambassadors and give us even more business just by using our product and being happy about it.
What role does strong processes play in this game?
Well, I think it all comes down to processes. Whereas, I mean, you'll have a lot of processes in companies at the moment. I mean, if you look at corporate structures, they're known for being more or less horrible to work at because of all these different requirements and processes they have built in. I think you need to have understandable processes. People really need to understand why are these processes here, and they're the fundamentals we work on. So if you look at any star athlete, whether it's basketball or it's football or tennis players, they're really good at all the fundamental skills. That's what they're good at. It's on autopilot most of the time. If you look at boxers, they keep on making the same moves, and it's a process. They worked on that process, and it becomes fundamental to their success. So that's how we have to look at these processes. How can we make them fundamental to our success and really ensure that everybody understands them? So if we're talking about a collaborative environment, right, interdepartmental collaborative environment, we need to be sure that these departments actually talk to one another, not just the marketing manager with the sales manager or the C-level people. I'm talking about one-on-ones between an account executive with a content marketeer, or a content marketeer that has a one-on-one with a developer or a product manager, just to get a clear mindset, a clear idea of what they're trying to achieve, what their goals are, not just the company goals, but their personal goals within that role. What skills are they trying to learn, and how do they want to contribute to that company? Now, I mean, we've all spoken to very inspiring people, and they're inspiring for a reason, because they're passionate, and they're usually open about what they want to achieve. And that's something those one-on-ones can ultimately result in. You talk to someone like that, and then you get inspired as a salesperson. Okay, this developer is trying to improve this product or trying to improve his skill set in this way. And now I have a better understanding what he's trying to do. I can discuss this next time I'm talking to my client or prospect. Hey, I'm working in a team with highly intelligent people, with highly ambitious people, and we're trying to help you get the most out of our solutions. So tell me what you need, and I'll share that internally, and we'll see what we can do over time. So, I mean, a very long answer, but I hope that answers your question.
Well, actually, you answered two in one, because what you're saying at the same time is how that contributes to your growth objectives. So I totally agree. And what I learned is that I think one of the best thing I ever introduced was building feedback loops, one-on-one, what you're saying, because in a group setting, even if the three of us, if we're going to discuss a sensitive topic, or what's really top of mind at the moment, you tell something different than when it's really one-on-one. Then you're going to sit more laid back, say, okay, I really have this on my mind, or this issue or challenge. And that's different when the group is bigger than two. So I think that was the best thing I ever did, and it brought me so many insights on what company really needed at the time, and how we could improve processes or approaches, or optimize collaboration, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's two things, right, Lisbeth, in your case, and then from that example, it's the insights that you got, but also the positive influence it had on the togetherness, actually, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 It's amazing. I spoke with a product manager, and that person within the company wears a lot of hats. So that person basically tries to talk to everyone in the company and gets feedback on their solution, on the processes within the company, how to make their life a little bit easier, automate certain processes, the communication, etc., etc. So she's solely focused on improving the internal culture in order for people to be happy and to do their work more efficiently. And just those one-on-ones, very valuable. And I've actually never worked at a company where we have all those one-on-ones. Maybe in the beginning when you get to meet people, but it should be mandatory at least once a month with one person in a different department, just to find out how can I further improve myself or my collaboration with this team.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. And that's really cool. And that's funny, if it's not that natural in a company's culture, it can be an easy kind of KPI thing, that's next to what you need to deliver to contribute to revenue. Like, we expect from you that every month you have 2 conversations with people outside your own department.
Yes.
And learn from that and bring that to our monthly meeting, for example, of what you've learned and what we can do with it as a department.
Yes, definitely. If they make it mandatory, obviously it will lose a little bit of the charm, but it should be mandatory, because if you don't make it mandatory, people are too busy. They'll focus on their own work. So, you can set it as a KPI, as a growth KPI even, focused on culture, company culture.
Exactly.
It creates a togetherness ultimately.
Yeah, and indeed, and then it's up to obviously management then, for example, to lower on the, let's say, a little bit on the business KPI, so there's room for that growth KPI, right? It's in the beginning maybe that's needed, and then in a half year or so, a year, it can maybe fade away, right? Because it's ingrained into the new embraced culture. But in the beginning, it's it loses the charm, but it could, like you said, it might be needed. If you look at, I think you gave a little bit of examples already, Dana, but let's say audience that has to deal with they really want to start embracing and adopting that growth to togetherness. Wow, the tribe thing, that looks, that really fits me. But how do I bring it into practice, right? Who are the key critical stakeholders to first start driving this and embracing this?
Within a company, I think it starts with the CEO. Obviously, CEOs have changed. The role of the CEO has changed, especially in bigger companies. They're not necessarily the business leader; they're the cultural leaders. They really showcase what that company is about. So I remember I was working at Trustpilot, and the CEO is just such a pleasant guy. He's an amazing person who really spoke to us as friends and made sure that we had just an amicable environment to work in, where we could talk to each other. It was very open. It was very flat. So I think the key stakeholder obviously is the CEO, the HR, but all of the managers within companies are relevant stakeholders, because every team in most companies operate as entities, and it's something. We'd love to change, and we should change it, but it's very difficult to change it because they're still operating as separate entities. So it's a transformation that will take quite some time. So every manager needs to understand what the new company culture is, what they're looking for, and you start with them. You start by helping them collaborate with other teams and ensuring, with those KPIs Lisbeth was talking about, with those KPIs, that their team members do the same thing. So top-down mandatory meetings and top-down a very descriptive new profile of the company culture.
Yeah, I like that. And I think an example also, I think we had a chat, right, Lisbeth? It was last month for the Crowdcast from Pavilion. And I think one of the speakers also there from the Irene Chen, she mentioned that to drive these kind of behaviors, right? She was talking about an annual planning process. And she said, before you go into the room as a leader, leave your marketing hat, your sales hat, your product hat, leave it outside.
Yeah.
You're there to be together. And I thought that was a great example of how simple it sometimes can be, right? Because if you're going in like in a war room, right? And I know I want to protect my marketing budget. No, but this is, you need to deliver me more leads. And hey, I want to develop the coolest product there is. So don't bother me, right? I'm exaggerating now, right? But that's if you leave the head out, then it's about the tribe and the togetherness instead of your individual separated entity. And great.
I think if I may respond, it's like Lisbeth actually said with those one-on-one meetings where she got a lot more insights and feedback from people. In order to have a growth mindset or a growth culture in a company, or to be good at sales or any type of job, you need to have a student mindset. We always talk about we want curious people in job descriptions. You see that we want curious people. You don't necessarily need curious people. You need people with a student mindset. You need people that want to learn how to improve their skill set, but actually want to learn more about other people within those companies or learn about their prospects. The best salespeople nowadays, buyers are intelligent. I mean, they're very intelligent. They know the whole process. I mean, they know what their budget is most of the time, their timeline, their roadmap, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
They know the selling tricks.
Tricks. So there's no use to focus on all those tricks. There is a great deal to be won just by communicating honestly and by being a student in that call, really understanding what are they looking for, what can be improved, give them honest advice, take care of them, make sure they understand what the process is, what the onboarding process is later on, the after sales process, and really ensure that they feel safe. And the same goes for your colleagues. Make sure you understand them, find out what triggers them, what are the things they run into, their challenges at work, and how can you help them, even though you're in a different department. How can you help them? I remember I was doing admin, and every time I brought in a new client, we would do a handover to the customer success team, and one guy came up to me and said, "Hey, listen, your handover notes, they're very concise. I mean, everything is in there, but not really." Not really. These are all bullet points, and I know it's very efficient, but I don't get a clear sense of who I'm talking to. The stakeholder he was talking about. I don't get a clear sense of who I'm talking to. I'm not sure what type of personality that person has. So next time, could you describe that a little bit better? Because it makes my conversation a lot easier.
Good points. No.
So was that your first attempt, or maybe not first, but at least an attempt in learning, getting the feedback and say, hey, I need to do this better next time because it's helping my colleague to drive those conversations?
Definitely, but not only that colleague. I mean, there are a lot of moments where you learn something and you find out, okay, I made a mistake here. But I don't want to make mistakes. It's not that we strive for perfection, which is unattainable, but we need to understand how can I make my life easier by making other people's lives easier. So it's altruistic, but also selfish. It's basically a paradox of winning, helping your team members by helping yourself, and the other way around. So once I understood that part, where I could help myself by helping them, and the other way around, that's where the growth really started, and I could focus on all kinds of skills that could help them, or all kinds of little tasks I could perform just to make their life easier.
Cool. And I guess also made life easier, but also celebrated more, right? So, what are the successes you have celebrated with your team, and maybe also with buyers? But and how have you done that? Because sometimes people forget to celebrate, right? It's not only about ringing that bell, right? In the old-fashioned sales war room, right? When the 100K ARR deal comes in, but celebration is so much more, probably. But yeah, could you tell us somewhat more about that? How do you do that?
I believe in small steps. So every small step has a little victory. So in sales, you have a large sales funnel, especially in enterprise sales. It starts with getting the right person on the phone or via email. That's the first victory. I've been doing this 20 years now. I'm still very happy every time I book a demo. I'm really happy. So I book a demo, you book your discovery call, there's another win there. But once they say, hey, I've listened to a podcast your company has, or I've actually read one of your case studies, that's a win you have to celebrate. I think you should really highlight that and mention it to the marketing department. In a lot of sales companies, salespeople will basically ignore that marketeer, that content marketeer that wrote that article. They won't even mention it. It's something you can mention in Slack. You can mention it in your CRM and ensure that management knows it. You can mention it to your manager or at the next team meeting. So, celebrating creates a form of togetherness, but a lot of departments, and mostly we're talking about people, are left out. So let's make sure that everybody is included in every deal, if they were included, at least. So that also means the developers, the product managers, etc., etc.
Wow, I think those are some good examples indeed, and also recognizable, right? What you see mostly happen is that indeed sometimes the marketeer or someone earlier up in the funnel, let's keep it like that, is not being involved in it, and it's someone most likely more closer, right? Like a sales architect or so, who gets also on stage. Yes, he gets also the credits, but it's, if you play the togetherness game, it's about the touch points and the milestones in order to win, and then that will lead up to winning together. And I think those are some great examples, Dana. Thanks for sharing that, man. I think we'll lean into the last part then, right, Lisbeth?
Yes, absolutely. Future growth, it is. So I'm very curious, Dana. What are your top priorities as a business development leader?
My top priorities at the moment, personally or career-wise?
At least connected to your profession, but it can be a link to a personal thing as well, of course. Yeah,
it is a link to a personal thing. So at the moment, I'm focused on communication skills. As we just discussed, buyers are very aware of all the games. Stakeholders internally within companies, they have their own budgets, their own targets. So I'm really focusing on communication skills. How can I ensure that people feel understood after they've spoken with me? I might not always agree, and I don't always have to agree, but they do need to understand that I understand that, so we can move forward and help each other or negotiate in a more efficient way. So that's something I'm really focused on. And obviously, the whole culture thing we spoke of, the tribal culture and collaboration amongst departments, that's something I'm focused on. How can we instill that in every organization I work at, or I've even worked at? So sometimes I talk to former colleagues like, hey, have you looked at this? Maybe you want to talk to that person, right? So that's something I'm focused on, and I'm sure if these things are in place, then that environment I'll be working in will be a much much more pleasant environment to work in, to maximize results and ultimately get fulfillment, because that's what it's about. I mean, end of the day, whether it's 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock, you need to be happy when you go home.
Absolutely.
You need to have some sense of fulfillment. And we've all been in those conversations, right, with colleagues that didn't go too well. They didn't go too well. And, frankly, it sucks. I take it personally, right? I go home and I take it personally. I'm thinking about, hey, how to improve this next time. What did I do wrong? Maybe I didn't even do something wrong. Maybe that person was wrong. But how can I ensure that I take ownership and focus on my skill set and ensure that, that there is a environment of collaboration?
Yeah, and it's keep on learning and working together on that. And it's saying it's more about doing things better tomorrow, because you can't change the mistakes or your maybe immaturity on a certain topics, or that's not it's not a blame. It's more like you learn from it, and how can we do it better tomorrow, and how can we collaborate better tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
I think then we lean a little bit into the last stages of the dialogue, right? Lisbeth, I think the honor is you about the bucket list one.
Yes.
Ooh.
And that maybe can be personal as well, or business, but is there any? Let me start. Is there any?
A bucket list. Okay, let's start professionally. I want to work toward becoming a CRO. So that's something I'd like to check someday. It requires some work. Other than that, there are some bucket list entries as traveling all over the world. I mean, I've been working remotely now for a little over two and a half years now. So before COVID, I was already working remotely. I'd like to work remotely in a slightly warmer country. That would be nice as well. Yeah, that's it for now. I think that's it for now.
Yeah, those are nice. If you could achieve those. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. If you would have 3 tips for the ones that want to get started with building a tribe, right? Let's challenge you also, right? In 60 seconds, you have 3 tips. What would it be?
I don't need 60 seconds. It's focus on communication skills. We don't get trained in that. It's something companies expect us just to have those skills, which is completely untrue. We need to focus on communication training. We need to focus on note-taking training. One of the most valuable skills you can have as a professional is note-taking. Really understanding what people are saying, taking notes, and then reflecting on that and focusing on a solution or any next steps you have. And the third part is focusing on a environment where people work together. Don't call a marketing team or a customer success team or a product team or a sales team separate entities. Focus on the company itself. It's one big team with obviously different purposes, but they need to work together. So let's ensure that everybody really understands that there is no competition between marketing and sales. There shouldn't be a competition between customer success and any other department. We need to work together and set mandatory meetings for those.
Awesome, man. That's I think some great learnings and tips for people who want to get started on this topic. But that leads us probably into the conclusion of this podcast. But actually for this time, I wouldn't say it's a conclusion. We want to celebrate and cheer here that the topic of today's episode, which is serving your market by Grow to Togetherness, like tribes do, will be the series of 2022.
Wow.
It is.
Exciting.
Yes, it is.
So we've been closing off this year on serving your market like a king or queen. And we look back at a fantastic conversation, a critical topic that is super aligned to, I think, what is happening now in the world. And we're super honored that you have been the one that actually have been the driver of this dialogue and initiating this, Dana. So thanks a lot for that. And
awesome.
And we look forward to spin off into 2022. But first of all, thanks a lot. And if people want to hear more about tribal knowledge, about how to bring that into practice, if they just want to have a chat with you around what types of beers are on your plate now there.
I think you only took one sip, Dana.
I mean, it's pretty good. I do prefer water. I definitely prefer water over beer. So, but it's an honor. It's been an honor to be invited. Obviously, for you to move forward on this topic, that's great to hear. I really enjoyed one of your last podcasts with Zeno. I think if people really want to understand from an HR perspective, but also a sales perspective on how to manage teams and how to instill that growth mindset within a company, check out that podcast again.
Nice. We see some referrals from speaker to speaker now here. Love it.
So it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
All right. So if people want to reach out to you, LinkedIn, best platform?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best platform. I mean, my name is quite difficult. I think there are about 12 people with this last name in the world. They're all family members. So I'll be very easy to find.
Cool, man. Awesome. Thanks a lot for your time and joining in. And I think we look back at a great dialogue. So thanks everybody for listening in as well. And we see you next year in 2022.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll catch you in the next episode.